Well, hello there and welcome to another Wilderness Tamed video. A fireside chat with an actual fire. So we're in the depths of winter now. We've had our first snowfall of this winter last night. A bit of a shock, a bit depressing. So in this one I've got a list of 10 jobs as recommended by Chat GPT. To carry out during the winter months, and I'm going to discuss each one, but first I'm going to have myself a cup of chai. Wapi chai? Iko hapa. Oh yeah. So for those of you who don't know, chai is kind of a sweet flavoured milky tea, all prepared in the one pot. So I've got my big probably put the kettle on pot on the fire there, and yeah, it's got wow, oh nice. So Rington's decaf morning breakfast tea with oat milk, cinnamon and a little bit of garam masala, and it's splendid. Wow. And that'll keep nice and hot on the fire. Yeah, so Chat GPT, for those of you who've not used it, I actually find it a great resource, all kinds of stuff. And then so this morning I just put in, what was my question? List 10 jobs to do in the garden for winter. Do you understand? Question mark. I always put that at the end. Chat GPT's response: yes, I understand. Here are 10 garden tasks you can consider doing during the winter. I like that it's you can consider doing it during the winter. Don't necessarily have to. Nice. Okay, so number 1, winter pruning. Yeah, I would say for like shrubs and trees and things. So fruit tree pruning is generally undertaken during the winter. I tend to wait till sort of February time before doing apples and pears. But yeah, all good. And trim out, it says remove dead or diseased branches. Well, yeah, that would be a good idea at any time of year if you spot them. Now then, the next two, number 2, mulching. So apply a layer of mulch to protect plants' roots from freezing temperatures and help retain moisture in the soil. Yes, absolutely. I would say clear autumn leaf fall from lawns, paths, patios, decking, bridges, that sort of thing, because they'll make those surfaces very soggy and wet, and they can like blanket out the lawn and starve it of light and it'll yellow off. And again, they can also make it very wet and soggy underfoot. So remove them from that. And your options are the long-winded way, where you take the leaves off and put them into a leaf bay or a compost bay, and leaf mould notoriously takes a long time to break down into usable compost, but it's excellent stuff for soil conditioning. Or the more direct way is just take them off the surfaces you don't want them on and put them directly onto your beds and borders and just let nature do its thing. So yeah, the worms will draw the leaves down into the top few centimetres of the soil where they'll break down and feed the soil, and then all your sort of invertebrates and molluscs and things will munch away on the leaf litter and turn it into compost, probably quicker than it would in a leaf bay sort of situation. So I would tend to just dump all your leaves onto your beds and borders, unless like me you're growing native stuff which doesn't want nutrient rich soil, so then you would remove them and compost them and use them for seed sowing or well, mulching fruit and vegetable borders. Okay, so yeah, that's a good one. Immediately followed by number 3, clear garden beds. Remove debris, fallen leaves and weeds from the garden beds to prevent disease and pests from overwintering. Okay, there's a slight contradiction. So remove debris, plant matter, maybe. Fallen leaves, no, don't. And weeds, yeah, maybe. But again, if you followed my garden lesson videos, shouldn't have any space for weeds. If you've planted your garden beds up nice and tight with things that you want, there won't be room for weeds. So we'll ignore that one. That's for old person's gardens where they've got a plant here and a plant there and loads of bare soil in between, and then another plant 1.5 meters away with a load of bare soil. You know the type. It's a very British thing. In fact, it's an old Georgian landscaping thing. This is really nice. If anybody wants to pop round immediately, there's loads. As you know, I've got lots of cups. Come round and have a cup of chai. So yeah, don't remove your debris and your leaves from the garden beds. Weeds, yeah, if you've got them, but you shouldn't have. Okay. One of my favourite places to visit is Howick Hall Gardens on the Northumbrian coast, and it was home to Charles Grey, famous politician who campaigned for the abolition of slavery in the UK, and famous for the tea, Earl Grey. And that was his family home, Howick Hall. Beautiful place, fantastic garden, very much more a plants person's garden than, say, Alnwick, which is a bit more Disneyland. But I remember years ago talking to the head gardener there, and he would say that they cut all the fern fronds down, and they actually went out onto the wider estate beyond the garden and harvested bracken, which, for those of you who don't know, bracken is similar looking to a fern, as in it unfolds a frond, but the fronds are held on a very tall bare stem, rather than ferns which grow from a sort of rosette with hardly any sort of stem at all to the fronds. And bracken can be classed as quite an invasive plant in some places. And they use the fern fronds and the bracken fronds to mulch around the bases of things like, and he specified, azaleas, rhododendrons, camellias, which are notoriously shallow rooted. So they just made a nice sort of donut mat of insulating bracken and fern fronds around those particular shrubs, and I'm sure others as well. So do the same with leaves. Just stack them if you want to pack them a bit tighter around the roots of things. Remember, with trees, the roots of trees aren't immediately around the base, around the trunk. Okay, the roots that take in the moisture and the nutrients are the tips of the roots, which generally don't really extend much beyond the crown of the tree. This is getting into a different realm altogether, but it's also like the drip line. So when rain hits the crown of the tree, the leaves sort of shed the water down around in a wide ring on the soil just below the extent of the canopy. So if that's the trunk, that's how far the drip line is at the ends of the branches. So the roots are going to be pretty much under that. So that's where you want to insulate to retain the moisture over the winter, not immediately around the trunk. That wouldn't do any harm, but you want to extend it, any sort of mulching to the drip line, okay, the edge of the crown. Right, so that's clearing garden beds. Composting, so start or continue composting. Kitchen scraps, it mentioned, really important. There's so many people who have compost heaps, they never put kitchen scraps on. And I know there's this, it encourages rats nonsense. No, if you're putting out veg peelings fruit cores, and tea bags and wood ash from fires, not coal ash. Wood ash is great for composting. If you've got natural fibre carpets and rugs, the contents of your Hoover bag, literally, for a bit of dry matter, and then paper and card and stuff like that. But kitchen scraps, yeah. Rats will be encouraged to compost heaps if you're putting in cooked food waste and meat and breads and things like that, which, why would you put those in compost? You don't. And why are you wasting that kind of stuff? That's so good. So yeah, and I mean, let's be honest, rats are going to be in your garden anyway, regardless of how it's set up. They're just everywhere, and I'll get onto that problem in another one of these points. So, but yeah, composting, like, I'm a massive fan of composting. Obviously the job I do, is that boiling again? I create a lot of, I get a lot of garden waste, and I take it to the compost heaps on the allotment and use it, which you've seen, and again in another previous video from quite a while ago, turning hedges into veggies, and mulching the beds on the allotment. That is boiling again. I'm just going to take that off. Good stuff. Nice, these fireside chat. Well, it's nice for me anyway. So yeah, composting, vitally important, and I would say do it as much as you can. Tool maintenance. Now this shouldn't necessarily just be a winter job. I know in a video from a couple of months ago I was renovating my scythe blades. The same should be done, and it highlights it in this thing. So secateurs, shears, loppers, bow saws I would add to that. If you can do your own tool maintenance, great. I mean, with things like shears and secateurs and things, it's easy enough. You clean up the blade using those Gary Flex blocks that I mentioned in the scythe blade maintenance things. They're great for getting sort of black plant resins off blades, and then a squirt of oil, a bit of a sharpen, job's a good one. Power tools is a different thing, so your hedge trimmers, chainsaws, brush cutters and strimmers if you're amateurish enough to use those things. I take mine to, not that I have a brush cutter or a strimmer, but my hedge cutters and chainsaw I take to my local tool hire place just before I go away on my winter travels and say, there you go, I'd like them serviced, thanks, and you've got a month to do it, so no immediate panic. I'll not be using them, so why not get them done then? And that works out really well. Yeah, but again, tool maintenance should be an ongoing thing. After every time you've used a tool, clean it and sharpen it if it needs it. None of my tools go back into my van without first at least being brushed off. I realise that means something quite different in Portugal. But yeah, so, and if there's an outdoor tap or some kind of bucket full of water, I'll give them an actual wash down before I put them back in the van. So I don't want my van full of bloody soil and leaf matter. Number 6, inspect and repair structures. It talks about fences, trellises and raised beds for damage and make necessary repairs. I'd also obviously include glass houses and sheds in that, and wood stores, especially like timber framed stuff. Any timber that you're putting into the ground, as I've mentioned in previous videos, fence posts and support posts for structures like sheds and things, charcoal it to preserve it. It'll preserve it for a Brazilian years, because the current wood preservatives are as useful as soapy water. Since the ban on creosote, which, yeah, excuse me, it was quite harmful to the soil, it was a very, very good long-term soil preserver. Wood preserver. Soil preserver. Winter sowing. Start cold, hardy seeds indoors or directly sow them in the garden for early spring blooms. Yeah, I guess. I mean, a lot of vegetables can be sown over the winter, and there's an excellent YouTube channel that I subscribe to, Green Side Up, smash and chop from the west coast, Cumbria in England, and just loads and loads of really, really useful vegetable growing allotment videos, techniques and things. If, like me, you want a wildflower meadow or lawn, you can pretty much sow native UK wildflowers at any time of year. Certainly during the autumn, they'll germinate, grow a little bit, and then sit tight through the winter, and then romp away in the spring. I would generally sow between February and April, have a gap through the summer where it's potentially going to be dry, and then sow again maybe September through to early November. And the soil is generally warming up during the spring, or warm enough through the autumn months that the stuff will germinate. Okay, so that's a good one. Yeah. Now, point number 8, bird feeding. Now, I have an issue with this one. I don't put food out for the birds at all. But then, you know my garden, you've seen it. It's a natural habitat. I always have birds foraging in my garden for insects and for seeds. The wren regularly will come in, and the blue tits, coal tits and things will come in to this jasmine under the canopy over the decking here. It's full of, that's got aphids on it. The timber work has lots of little spider webs, and there's insects and things in there, so they're constantly foraging and pecking about in there. And then in the trees and shrubs, and certainly on the grass, any amount of forage for the birds, as well as other wildlife. So no, I don't put bird food out. Sorry, it's this elbow, does that occasionally. My neighbours, certainly previous neighbours, both sides, have always put bird food out. Part of the reason one neighbour in particular does that is because there's no natural habitat in their garden. It's patio, gravel paths, fake grass, and more patio and more gravel. And the borders have wood chips down, so there's no ground cover plants. The shrubs are pruned bare stemmed up to a certain height and then sort of pom-pommed on the top. And then they have a hedgehog box in the border with no natural habitat for it to forage in. So where does the hedgehog come every night? It comes into my garden. If it's even in the box. I mean, I've got log piles and things it can shelter in as well. But yeah, loads of evidence that the hedgehog comes pretty much every night into my garden. I mean, I've seen it often enough as well. So, and then as a result, that neighbour puts out loads of bird food. Which brings us on to rats, which I mentioned before. Now, in my ponds in previous years, I've had anything up to between 60 and 70 frogs breeding during the spring. And then during summer months, every time I walk down the garden, there's a plip, plop, plip, plop, plip. There's loads of the frogs that are basking around the edges of the ponds, jumping into the water. This year in particular, the most frogs I've seen in one time has been no more than 8. and it's down to the rat population. And I have proof of it because one of my Airbnb guests who stayed here for over a month last year, several times when I came back from work, she reported having seen rats swimming around in the ponds. And we were sat out on the decking together and there was a frog started squealing. I don't know if you've ever heard. A common frog around a temperate area has a particular high-pitched, almost sort of squeaky dog toy squeal that it lets off when it's under immense stress or it's been captured by a predator. It's a very distinct noise, and yeah, sure enough, the frog was being attacked by a rat. So thanks to my neighbours feeding the birds, we now have a massive rat population, and they've completely decimated my frog population. So I will endeavour to redress the balance somewhat this winter. And it won't include poison because there's, like I say, there's hedgehogs and other small mammals in the garden. Yeah, and birds of prey. We've got buzzards and red kites hanging around. If they came across a carcass of a rat that had died from poisoning, they're going to die from secondary poisoning, and it's a long, slow, lingering and very unpleasant death. So that's bird feeding. You can choose to do it or not. I might have just put you off bird feeding, but again, if you've created a natural wildlife haven rather than a formal sterile garden, you shouldn't really need to. Number 9, check for pests. Nope, all good. It says, inspect plants for signs of pests and treat if necessary. Well, there's way too many plants in my garden to be going around checking for pests. And I never do. I mean, in the summer, for some reason the red campion and the lesser or common knapweed, the stems are thick black with black aphids every year. But then every year some of the birds come and feast on the aphids, and the flowers still flower, and other than having black stems, the plants don't really seem to suffer that much. I'm sure they do because there's like a massive infestation of aphids, but I'm not going around checking them, and I'm certainly not going to treat them. I've got nature to do that for me. Work with nature, not against it, and your life will be so much easier, guaranteed. Oh, number 10, the last one, which I kind of agree with, plan for spring. Well, I have. Excuse me a moment, this needs a top up. God, this is heavy. Oh yeah. Oh, it's hot. Use the winter months to plan your garden layout, order seeds, very good, and prepare for any landscaping projects you may want to undertake in the spring. So plan your garden layout. Well, I don't have anything to do out here. It's mainly on the allotment. I would plan what crops I'm going to grow in which raised beds, and which brings us on to seeds. So I'll order my seeds during the winter for them to arrive and get ready for the exciting part, which is sowing all the seeds in the spring. And prepare for any landscaping projects. So again, yeah, you would either, if you've got the imagination and the skill, do your own garden designs, any refurbishments, shifting stuff around, do it in the winter months before spring kicks in properly, and then you can chill back, relax and enjoy the fruits of your labour through the summer months, and well beyond that into the future if you've made a good job of it, I guess. unless your patio is swallowed up by a sinkhole or your swimming pool fills up with alligators. I'm mainly addressing the viewers in Florida at this point. That's just as an aside, always a thing that puzzles me. People in Florida who move into a house that's been built on what was previously swamp, and then they're surprised that an alligator's turned up in their swimming pool. Well, you have just destroyed their habitat. And it's the same as people here, "Ooh, I've got rats in the garden." Of course you've got rats in the garden. That's like saying, "Oh, I've got a bird in the garden." Really? That comes as a surprise to you? Okay. So, yeah, close the computer down, give it a rest, and give my eyes a rest. That was it, 10 jobs as supplied by Chat GPT. Let me know in the comments what you think of those jobs. If there's anything you think should be added to that list, jump in on the comments and suggest whatever you have up your sleeves. I would say if you've got a log burner, if you're not already stocked up, get in touch with a tree surgeon, get him to bring you some nice discs of tree trunks, buy yourself a splitting maul, look back at my video how to swing both ways, and that will teach you how to chop logs. And chopping logs is, I love it. I can't be bothered with gym-based exercises. I've tried it. I mean, I used to years ago spend hours in a gym in my youth. Now, just can't be bothered. Really can't be bothered. But give me a scythe and a meadow to mow, couldn't be happier. Give me, 3-4 tons of logs to chop in my element, and I'll go at it all day because of my swing both ways technique. Check it out. Might put a link to it up here somewhere if I can be bothered. Yeah, just chopping logs, it's a great workout, and it's proper like outdoor work. It's not pouncing around in a gym with cables and weights and yeah, whatever. That's right, I said it, pouncing around in a gym. If you're having to go to a gym, you're not doing a decent day's graft. So, that's all I'll say on that matter. Love you all. And that's just my opinion, of course. I wasn't stating a fact there. Ponder emoji. Yeah. Let me know in the comments if you've got any other suggestions than the ones that ChatGPT's just come up with. I'd be interested to know. It's all good stuff, but I really am quite impressed with ChatGPT. If you haven't already tried it, give it a go. Ask it anything you want. It's amazing. And whilst we're on the subject of asking computers anything you want, I didn't mention this in my Green Journey video from a few months ago, that when I search, I use Ecosia as my search engine, both on my phone and my Mac. And do not touch the big G, the one that everybody else refers to, which is now like the go-to term for, I'll just Google it. Don't. Plant some trees whilst you're searching. Ecosia. It's great. It's not sponsoring me. I wish somebody would. Maybe I need more views per video. That would help. But yeah, every few searches, they're funding tree planting schemes somewhere around the world, which I think is great. So on that lovely note, I should bid you all farewell. I've got this chai to work my way through. It cleans my system. And stay warm is all I'll say. I wouldn't encourage anybody to go out there and get grubby in this current weather. Hope it's warmer where you folks are. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.